Now, let's talk about the BBC. It has been slammed, as they say in journalism, for wasting £26.6 million, making just 310 staff redundant. So huge payoffs. An average of 100,000, just over £100,000, 100,661 quid each, if you want to know, was given to 221 staff who took voluntary redundancy, whilst a further 93 were handed an average of nearly £47,000 for non-voluntary redundancy. In other words, they were kicked out, but they did quite nicely anyway. But these are vast settlements. Among the big-name BBC staff who've recently left, they may or may not be included in this round of lucrative redundancies, but Mark Mardell, former European and North American editor, has left. Carrie Simons, of course, the China editor, who so famously railed against unequal pay for women and men. She left her job in China and came back to Britain in high dudgeon about that. And also James Robbins, the well-known diplomatic correspondent of the BBC, has also left recently. Not entirely clear whether they were among the beneficiaries of these vast payouts, but certainly 310 staff have done very, very well. Why does the BBC pay so handsomely when it comes to redundancies? They seem to pay so much more than private companies. In fact, they give their staff, certainly the on-screen and on-radio staff, they give them huge salaries compared with the private sector. They don't know how to use money. That's the point at the BBC, because they get given £3.5 billion every year. It's our money, licence fee payers' money. And maybe until they don't get that annual bunce, they will never understand the value of money. But in the meantime, it's good news if you work there. It's even better news if you're getting fired or you're deciding to leave. Let's talk to at the Taxpayers Alliance, Joe Ventry. Hello, Joe.
Hi there, Kevin. How are you? Thank you for having me on.
Well, thank you for coming. Tell us what you think about this. I mean, you know, the BBC, to be fair, the new Director General, Tim Davie, has pledged and vowed to reduce staff numbers, because it is a massively overstaffed organisation. I mean, they send more staff to cover the Olympic Games than there are athletes. They are notorious. You know, here we are on Talk Radio. It's me in the studio, 4 people in the production room. Go to a BBC radio show. There's about 22 of them involved. It is ludicrous there. So it's good that he wants to slim down the staff, but why does he have to give everyone who's leaving so much money? This is so much more than you get in the private sector. What on earth is going on?
Well, indeed, and I think a lot of licence fee payers will be asking themselves the same question when they look at these headlines this morning. I mean, you know, it just feels like once again the BBC is indulging itself on licence fee payers' money. And if we look at the £26 million that the BBC is forking out on this scheme, we know that that's enough to cover over 150,000 licence fees. And, you know, you can't help but think of the over 75s who are now forced to stump up for this fee every year at a time like this.
Yeah, what about that? I mean, why this once again seems to be a case of the BBC funneling all the money towards itself, towards its own employees. You know, taking our licence fee money and dividing it amongst themselves very handsomely. And then, as you quite rightly say, there are these over 75s who've now got to pay for their licence. Well, surely 26 million quid would go a long way to allowing these over 75s to carry on getting their free licenses.
Well, it certainly would. And I mean, if you look at that average number that you mentioned there in the opener, you know, the over £100,000 exit payment on average for these voluntary redundancies, I mean, it's hard to imagine that most people who actually stump up for the license fee themselves will ever receive a bonus of that sort of magnitude. I mean, it really is shocking. But I don't think we're ever going to see real reform until the license fee itself is scrapped. And it feels like a lot of these measures, you know, that Tim Davie's coming out with and saying that, you know, this is a measure that's ultimately there to cut costs, it feels piecemeal, and it feels like it's skirting around the fundamental issue, which is the license fee itself.
My analogy has always been about the BBC that in the old days it used to be the sort of robber barons, the aristocrats who ran this country and basically took all the money from the peasants and divided it among themselves. Now we have the BBC, which takes all the money from the peasants and divides it among itself, particularly middle management. Now, I don't know how many of these redundancies were middle management characters, but certainly the BBC could get rid of, everyone knows, it's about 90% of its various middle managers with no detrimental effect to the organisation.
No, indeed. And what I found interesting in the Times' report is that there's apparently a notable uptick in these voluntary redundancies in October, which of course is the month before the public sector exit payments cap was implemented by the government. Apparently there's a notable sort of uptick in that month, which I'm sure was purely coincidental.
The license fee, I mean, as I said in my intro, it seems to me the BBC is an organisation that will never understand the value of money until it ceases to receive its £3.5 billion annual bunts from us, the suckers in the public, the licence fee payers' money. The licence fee, with each new situation that we're discussing here, the BBC endangers itself in terms of getting the licence fee. This licence fee is an endangered species, isn't it?
Oh, it's a complete dinosaur. Yeah, it's an absolute anachronism, and it's hard to see how the BBC itself will survive in the future with this, this completely outdated and unfair fee that it implements on people. It's not fit for the 21st century, quite frankly, especially in the age of Netflix and Now TV and Amazon Prime. Yeah, it's on an island of its own.
Well, we've just been through Christmas, traditionally the high point of the schedules of the year, and the BBC served up, frankly, a load of useless rubbish that nobody watched. The worst figures ever on a Christmas day. EastEnders, which once got 33 million viewers on Christmas Day, got 3.3 million this year, which is absolutely disastrous for the BBC. But what we're talking about here is that the BBC doesn't seem to do what it's meant to do, what its purpose is, which is to entertain us with good and inform us with good programmes. Funnily enough, there's a decent drama on the BBC at the moment called Black Narcissus. I've been watching that, and you know what struck me? This is the first decent drama I've seen on the BBC probably for a year. Now, while they're not making very good programmes, they are spending all this money on redundancies, and they're also spending £100 million on diversity. This is an organisation that needs to get its priorities right, doesn't it?
Well, exactly. And I mean, on the question of programming, I mean, obviously quite a lot of that is subjective. I'm sure there's a lot of BBC programs that, I enjoy. There certainly is. There's certainly BBC programs that our listeners today will enjoy. But I mean, it comes down to a fundamental question of choice, doesn't it? I mean, in this modern age, if you want to subscribe to Netflix or, its other counterparts, you have the choice to. But the BBC still acts as though it's, this is the 1980s and we only have the BBC to stump up for. It imposes itself on us in a way that just isn't fit for the 21st century. Yeah. We need to see that come to an end.
And I think that too many of their staff are dyed-in-the-wool BBC lifers who've always lived under the traditional television system, scheduled telly, EastEnders at 7:30, Holby City at 8, all that sort of stuff. Now that scheduled television is dying on its backside. It is dying a terrible death, and we see that because more and more people are gravitating towards the cherry-picking system of streaming television, watching what you like when you like. Netflix, Amazon Prime, Disney, Apple TV, more and more of these streaming services are coming along and offering a business model that the British public find extremely attractive. They are not going to want to spend 150 quid a year, or what is it, 157 now, isn't it? 157 pounds a year on an inferior service. Unless the BBC starts to match these streaming organisations with an equally good service, with equally good content, it cannot claim to force us to give it £157.50 every year, can it?
Well, exactly. And I mean, it continues to operate in the commercial market with the unfair advantage, if you like, of having an imposed taxpayer subsidy behind it. It's completely unfair, and we see it sort of squashes particularly small radio stations on the regional picture. But it's a completely sort of unfair advantage that I'm sure many people will be happy to see the back of when it finally does go.
Yeah, not to mention local papers. They got very damaged by the BBC's venture into websites. I think they've railed back from that now because that was anti-business. But then again, the BBC's pretty anti-business. Do you subscribe to the view, Joe, that the BBC should become a voluntary subscription service? If you want to pay for the BBC, by all means do so, and you can watch it because you've paid for it, just like with Netflix now. If you don't pay for Netflix, you don't get it. Right now, if you don't pay for the BBC, you potentially go to prison. Do you believe it's time for the BBC to get rid of this ludicrous legal requirement to pay for it and to start saying, if you like what we're offering, pay for it, and if you don't, you can't watch it?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's absolutely the case, Kevin. You've hit the nail on the head there. It is all about choice fundamentally. And, as technology evolves, as more choices become available to consumers, the gap becomes more noticeable, I think, to people. And we the BBC cannot simply go on denying the state of affairs that the things are in. I mean, it often reminds me of the Monty Python sketch of the pet shop owner trying to flog a dead parrot. There is an element of denial to it, as you said, a very sort of old-fashioned thinking, and it's more than the high time for the BBC to get real. And
you're probably aware of that kind of what I think is a shocking statistic that 10%. 1 in 10 of all magistrates' court cases are the BBC taking license fee non-payers to court. So people caught watching the Beeb when they haven't paid their license get prosecuted by this organisation. At the very least, we have to take that away from them. They can't keep convicting people. They often turn out to be poor old ladies who literally can't afford their license. They're living on their own and they end up in court. And some of them end up in prison. Still, there's a number of people every year go to prison because they didn't pay their BBC licence fee. Lots and lots more get fined, fairly substantial fines. They have to be deprived of that legal power, don't they?
Well, absolutely. And I mean, as more and more people come into the licence fee picture, the cost of enforcing the license fee itself actually expands as well. So, compound that with the 26 million that we're talking about today. Yeah. And, the costs keep going up and up. It's a sort of self-sustaining system at the moment.
Yeah, this has to be a year of change for the BBC. This has to be the year where the new Director General, Tim Davie, grasps the nettle and actually gets to grips with all the many things that are wrong with this organisation, because it has in the past proved itself to be a oil tanker that cannot change course. This needs to be the year, doesn't it?
It does, absolutely. And it's long overdue, quite frankly, but Tim Davie makes a lot of good noises about reform and sort of piecemeal cost savings here and there, and more adherence to their charter. But quite frankly, we need to be firm and say that that's not enough, and the government needs to do the same as well. It needs to be firm and look at real reform for the BBC, and it starts with the licence fee.
Couldn't agree more, Joe. Thank you so much for your time. Joe Ventry there from the Taxpayers Alliance.